Bob Steele sitting in for Kevin Miller, who is away on spring break with his kids. And joining us on the live line, 2nd District Congressman Prince Hill. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Mr. Steele. Happy day to you.
Happy day to you as well. Well, first Paris and now Brussels, your reaction to yesterday's ISIS attack?
Well, this is no surprise. This is the mission of ISIS, which is to terrorize not only in the third world and in Muslim countries, but to come into the West, come into the European Union, come into the United States, and either through sleeper cells or through a concerted attack, which this one clearly was, a derivative of Paris, reap havoc on our way of life and our faith and beliefs.
During the primary campaign, I remember your advertising indicated your financial background could be an asset in the war on terror. Can you explain how we fight terrorism on the financial side?
Absolutely. We do it in 2 or 3 different ways. First of all, we try to interdict through the banking system and through the electronic means, money and how it transfers between groups that benefit terrorists, and cut that off. That's the most obvious way. Secondly, we look for people who are doing smuggling or doing a fake trade operation where they overvalue or undervalue a set of commodities going in and out of countries and divert that money to terrorism. So that's actually a customs and border enforcement type issue. And then finally, we combine our knowledge and from intelligence on spying on financial contacts in the terror networks, and we try to take them out in a military operation. Example, interdicting oil trucks in the route between Raqqa and Mosul, Iraq. This is something President Obama failed to do for over 2 years. This was the main source of funding for terrorism for ISIS, and he refused to attack those. But since Paris, he's been convinced that that's something he has to do. So there's actually military operations tied to cutting off their money as well.
In presidential politics, in your party, Donald Trump wins Arizona and now has 741 delegates. Ted Cruz has 461. Many are saying that Mr. Trump's position on stricter immigration and deportation are having a big effect in terms of his campaign because of what happened in Brussels yesterday. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we should have strict screening for anyone coming into the United States from a country that's connected with terrorism, where we have knowledge of that. I introduced a bill that required the Homeland Security Director and the FBI Director personally to sign off on anyone seeking refuge in the U.S. that had travel to any country that the State Department says has got a terrorism challenge in it. But we also passed in December, as a part of the annual appropriations process, a bill that strengthens passport enforcement in the European Union, because that's really where the problem is. The EU has tourist visa passport capability with the U.S., along with 38 countries. And what this will allow us to do is block anyone who's traveled to Iraq or Syria with an EU passport from coming into the United States without additional screening and approval. And any country that has a weak passport system, meaning if it's not biometric, it's not online and electronic, they too would receive that additional screening. And those are the kind of minimal steps that we have to do to block the potential of terrorists trying to come into the U.S., in addition to normal border enforcement on the southern border, for example.
Congressman, meanwhile, President Obama is in Cuba, and our Governor Hutchinson, has said as early as yesterday that they need our rice, Arkansas rice, that it could be a big export commodity for our farmers. What are your thoughts about relations with Cuba and the president visiting Cuba?
Well, the president's decided to reassert diplomatic relations with Cuba, and he took his trip there. I have a lot of concerns about the way we've gone about opening up relations with Cuba. We have not, in my view, gotten a plan for reparations being paid to all the Cuban businesses, many of whom are now in America, whose family assets, farms, small businesses, manufacturing companies were stolen by the Castros when the communist dictators took over Cuba in the late 1950s. I think that kind of process is important. I think having more a formal role to democracy and a formal role to a greater private land ownership and business ownership in Cuba is important, and these are fundamental steps to a market economy, the rule of law, and democracy in Cuba. And I wish the president spoke out more clearly on that and would have met with all the dissidents in Cuba that are protesting the Castro regime. With that said, I think the first benefits of a little bit more warm relationship with the Cuban people will be American travel, tourism, and food-related exports. All their rice, most of it, 70-80% comes from Vietnam. And, of course, American-grown rice, including that in Arkansas, the largest rice producer, would benefit, I think, significantly. So as we see relations warm, I think one of the first beneficiaries will be ultimately American agricultural exports.
Well, one final question, and I'll let you go, and we appreciate so much you joining us this morning. Switching gears, the market mood, and your background in financial things is unquestioned. The market mood is apparently much more positive today in spite of the terrorist bombings in Brussels. How do you think it will go before the open?
Well, I've never tried to project the stock market, Bob. In 35 years of being around finance, I always look at individual companies and individual company prospects and make my evaluation that way. But I think markets do react to concerns, to global issues, and this once again reminds all of us how much we have to do to defeat ISIS and remove their scourge and that of Islamic terrorism off the planet so we can all prosper and grow and have a safer future.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We, again, appreciate it very much.
A happy Easter, Bob.
Same to you, sir.